Hi, I'm Jen, and thank you so much for checking out Your Best Work Life. Here we talk about all things that have to do with helping you advance in your career, maybe get promoted, perfect your resume, prepare for an interview, and really achieve your career goals, whatever that means to you. So please be sure to subscribe, that way you don't miss any of my latest videos. If you have questions or feedback, drop them in the comments, and please share these videos with anyone who might find them helpful, or anyone that you know that's really looking to advance in their career and achieve that next level of success. This has been a crazy year. 2020, we have all experienced the global pandemic of COVID-19, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how that has impacted hiring, because it has certainly changed the way that companies approach the hiring process, maybe some of the considerations that they make when they actually make a hiring decision. And some of those things may be short-term, but some of them I do think will have long-term implications, even once we hopefully get through this pandemic and things return to a little bit more normalcy. So I want to talk about three things that have resulted from COVID and how they've impacted hiring. Number one, it's shaken up the candidate pool. So when I say that, I mean that in a lot of different ways. You know, obviously certain industries were hit a little bit harder than others. So let's say, for example, you work in the restaurant industry. Obviously, a lot of restaurants across the country had to either shut down completely, significantly modify their operations. So anyone who worked in the restaurant industry, especially in the first few months of all of this, were significantly impacted. Many people lost their jobs. Many restaurants will not be reopening. However, there have been some other industries that are really busy. Obviously, anything in healthcare, non-clinical healthcare, telecommunications, transportation, logistics, different things of that nature. So it's been very interesting to see how COVID has impacted different industries in different ways, but that's created quite a shakeup in terms of the actual candidate pool. So again, some people have been laid off. Some people lost their jobs entirely because the company closed down. Some people were furloughed with the intention of being brought back. Maybe their hours cut, maybe your salary was cut. And so there could be any mix of things that have caused people either to be forced out of their job or in a position where maybe they are now considering looking for a new opportunity because their current position has been impacted in a way that either can't pay the bills or it's just not sustainable for whatever reason. So with that being said, there are a lot of applicants out in the market now. That was really not the case at the beginning of 2020. At the beginning of 2020, the hiring market was really tight. There were way more job opportunities than there were for qualified candidates. And now, again, it really depends on the skill set. Some skills, there's still very high demand, but others, there's so many available candidates. So it's just really shaken up the market. And that has an impact on the number of applicants that companies see and just the time and the process that it takes for them to go through those applicants and really consider the candidates that are out there. Another thing that's shaken up the candidate pool is, with certain companies having to cut costs or reduce their expenses, maybe they've had to cut back on some of the perks and the benefits that they've offered their employees in the past, taking away rewards or loyalty trips or different incentives. So that's another thing that even if someone didn't necessarily lose their job, if they're not being compensated in the same way, maybe they're now looking at what else is out there and they're open to making a move. Number two, and probably one of the more obvious, glaring things that have changed, are new interview protocols. So with so many people wearing masks and social distancing and some of the other guidelines and things that are being followed and recommended, and again, every city, state, county, everywhere is different. So there's really no consistency across the board, other than the fact that most cities and states are observing at the very least social distancing guidelines or using masks from time to time. So that obviously comes into play in a couple of different ways when it comes to interviews. I'm seeing a lot more use, of course, of phone and video interviews whenever possible. So they may be cutting out in-person or face-to-face interviews entirely if the entire organization is still working remotely. But in many cases, if they are still working on site or have select roles or individuals working on site, maybe it's a hybrid model. Maybe they do a couple extra phone interviews or maybe add a couple different video interviews before they bring someone on site. Whereas before, maybe that was their go-to right from the beginning. So it's definitely changed the interview process a little bit, and I highly recommend, if you are actively interviewing and looking for new opportunities, ask in advance what their guidelines or expectations are. That way that you're prepared. You may be curious just for your own concerns or safety as well, but certainly if you're going into an environment, you want to make sure that you are respecting whatever guidelines they have when you're stepping in for an interview. So just something to keep in mind when you are looking at approaching the application process and getting involved in some interviews, just with everything that's going on right now. Number 3, remote work. So with so much social distancing and not wanting to be in tight spaces with other individuals and spread the virus, etc., a lot of companies have gone to a all virtual or remote work model. Again, as I mentioned in my last point, some companies may be doing a bit of a hybrid where certain roles or functional areas within the company are actually on site and others are working remotely. So it all depends on you and what you do and the companies that you're considering. But with so much more remote work, this will impact hiring in a couple of different ways, certainly now, but possibly I think this is something that will last a little bit longer into the future as we go forward. I think a lot of companies have now been forced into allowing remote work where they were maybe opposed to it before or less inclined to offer that to their employees. And this year I think has shown a lot of organizations that they can adapt, their employees can adapt, that they can work successfully from home. Now, there are certainly challenges that come along with that, some anticipated, some maybe not anticipated, that companies have had to work through and overcome throughout the year. I certainly think we will see much more remote work indefinitely moving forward because our eyes have kind of been opened to what's possible, and companies look at, hey, how can we save on our overhead and our operating costs? Maybe we don't need such a large office space if we're getting just as much productivity from our employees when they're working from home. So I do think we will continue to see more remote work. That obviously impacts what your day-to-day work life looks like and is something to consider when you think about applying for a new job and which jobs may or may not be a good fit for you. So it's certainly a consideration there, but I think it does also tie into the first point, is that with so much remote work, it does shake up the candidate pool even more so, because just because I'm sitting here in Southern California, if I wanted to, I could likely be considered for positions on the East Coast without much problem because so many people are working remotely. So it's something to keep in mind. It opens up a lot more opportunity for you as a job seeker, but that does welcome a lot more competition as well. So something to keep in mind with more opportunity. It is exciting, and there's some different things that you can consider that maybe you wouldn't have been able to before. A dream company, a dream job, but you don't see yourself physically relocating. There's some really great things that can come from this, but just really think about the implications of that and really look at how have you done working remotely this year. If you are someone who's been working from home, has that been a good fit for you, for your family, for what makes sense for your goals and what you're trying to accomplish? So really look at that. Consider that as you are thinking about taking the next step in your career. Okay, so let's quickly recap on the 3 ways in which COVID has impacted hiring. Number 1, it's shaken up the candidate pool. There's a lot more people that are either actively looking and available for new jobs or are at least willing to potentially consider making a move because things have changed in their current company or in their current role. Number 2, new interview protocols. So significant changes to the interview process, whether that be doing more videos or phone interviews, or again, just observing social distancing and wearing masks. Number 3, remote work. This has changed the way not only that we conduct our business day to day, it has changed the way that many companies are approaching their strategy and how they run their business. And this opens up a lot of opportunities for you as a job seeker to consider positions, companies, and even opportunities in states that you never would have considered before. So there's pros and cons certainly that have come from this year, so let's try to focus on the positive. Wishing you the best success wherever you are in your career journey. Again, please be sure to subscribe. I hope this video was helpful. Drop any questions that you have below. I know this is a hot topic. And be sure to check out my website, liveyourbestworklife.com, to get all the resources you need to make the next move in your career. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.